A man in the gospel has a quarrel with his brother over inheritance. He walks up to Jesus and makes a request. He asked him to intervene in the case and make his brother give him his own share. Ordinarily, it's not a bad request. Seeing Jesus, the master of justice, he thought he would have justice from Christ. He thought Christ would immediately ask him, go call your brother so that we'll settle the matter immediately. Jesus rather declines to be a judge over the matter. It is not that Christ is not interested in settling disputes and bringing peace in families. He rather saw something deeper, something behind the man's request, and he preferred to tackle that particular problem, to tackle it from the root. The motivation for the dispute was greed, avarice, covetousness. And on these vices, this young man who came to bring complaint was not any more righteous than his brother. He was as interested in material accumulation as his brother is. And as long as greed constitutes the bone of contention, Christ's warning cannot be more apt. Christ says, take heed and beware of all covetousness, for a man's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. A man's life is not defined, is not made great by his material wealth, by his material possessions. The society, the world in which we live, projects to us its values, materialistic values. We are made to understand by the society and by the world that a person counts in the society if he has abundant wealth. So people try to accumulate, sometimes through clever means. They try to amass wealth. So what is important, uppermost in their mind, is how much he can accumulate. But that runs contrary to what Christ wants us to understand today. It boils down to, why are we here on earth? What is the purpose of our existence? If we devote all our time thinking about material things, we run the risk of losing focus of the purpose of our life here on earth. God has created us so that we might know him, love him, serve him here on earth, and live with him hereafter. And we cannot achieve this if we set our mind running after material things and forgetting the main thing, the main purpose of our existence. Wealth, money, all these things, they do not constitute the ultimate end of our existence. Wealth doesn't guarantee ultimate happiness. We are created for God. And if we choose to live and try to secure our life and our existence on material things that pass away, then we have chosen the least intelligent path to follow in life, the unwise thing to do. In fact, for Christ, it is foolishness. And to buttress this point, Christ told the parable of the rich fool. This man in the parable had an abundant harvest, and he basked in the euphoria of this abundance. He was basking in vanity of vanities. And in his show of vanity, he was found poor in the sight of God. And Christ said, as was the end of this man, death, and consequently loss of his soul, so it will be for those who accumulate wealth in this world instead of making themselves rich in the sight of God. The rich man could have become rich if he had shown gratitude to God, and if he had been generous to his neighbor, if he had given. But he chose, unfortunately, to live in materialism and egoism. Christ wants us to store up treasures for ourselves in heaven. He wants us to be rich in the sight of God. How do we do that? How do we become rich in the sight of God? He's telling us to cultivate virtues. If you are rich in virtues, you are rich in the sight of God. He is telling us to be good and to devote less time, or rather, our concentration and focus on having goods. It boils down to the difference between being and having, being good and having goods. Christ wants us to choose the first, be good. It is not that riches are condemned. Christ doesn't condemn riches or having wealth, but he condemns attitude to wealth. If wealth becomes our overriding approach to things, if it occupies our mind, our attention above everything else, to the point that we forget God, then wealth is a problem, an obstacle to worshiping God. And that's why St. Paul said that greed is another name for worshiping false gods. It's idolatry. Because greed breeds other things. It takes your mind away from God, and as one seeks to acquire, he begins to deploy some means that are not just sometimes to amass his wealth. Death reminds us that it is unwise to build our life on the material things that are passing away. At death, we abandon everything here on earth. Sometimes what we have acquired outlive us, and we leave them to others. But the only thing that we take with us from this world is goodness. That's the only thing that follows us. In the end, we will find out that of all the things we have acquired, the only thing that we have that will rest secure, that will be made secure, are the things we have given out, the things we have sacrificed, the things we have offered. They are ultimately the things we have, because they have been stored in heaven for us. We need to pray. We need to pray for the gift of wisdom, so as to have a correct approach to earthly things. Use them properly and hold fast to the things that endure.